We use what we call our 6 tenets of wellness as our guide. For us, those 6 tenets are thoughts, breathing, hydration, nutrition, movement, and rest. We're dynamic beings. We're designed to be in motion.
My mission is to get to the masses through viral activity. Nature has always had the solutions. Nature is so simple. The antidote for complexity as we've created in this world today is always simplicity and getting back to nature.
A great brand isn't built overnight. Like any leader who's joining any business or anything that's going through rapid change, it's like, where are our analytics? Where's our data? Because that's going to inform all of the decisions that we're making.
Exercise is like the best medicine. It's good for everything.
There's honestly no good reason why every gym or fitness product should not have an FSA, HSA option. So Michael, Susi, we've known each other we were just talking about this, pre-pandemic, so that's over 5 years. Yeah. You are the director of wellness at LinkedIn. Yes. And I'm just kind of in awe because you've got this small team of 5 people. I'm sure they're mighty, small but mighty. And you are trying to figure out wellness for a large company in LinkedIn that has 18,000 employees around the world.
Yes.
So I guess just to start, how do you view your mandate and what do you expect to, do from that?
For sure. I look at our mandate as really hinging around engagement. Are we getting people to come to the events we put on? Are we getting people to engage in the things that we are investing money in? So one of the things we want to make sure we don't do is waste money. And so we really measure closely, if we spend $1, how many people are showing up for that type of a thing. And we cut back if we don't think attendance is where it should be. And we maybe put more into investment where we see that's where people are wanting and showing up for different types of events.
Prior to us kicking off here, we were talking about exercise and how I guess when you think of health, exercise is probably the number one thing that people think that they need to do. But in the workplace and with some of your background, what would you say are equally, if not more important, when it comes to general health and wellness in the workplace?
For sure. I definitely think it's easy to over-index on fitness, on exercise. Just to kind of go back through my fitness journey, career as a professional, I had my first personal training job was at a New York sports club on the Upper West Side, and I was just a trainer. And everyone in the gym was there because they wanted to have your common goals. And as a former athlete, I still thought mainly around exercise and nutrition. That's what you have to do. And as I was talking to these folks that I would train, they were doing pretty well in those things, but they weren't accomplishing their goals. What I found was most of them suffered from really poor sleep and lack of mindfulness, for lack of a better term. Their stress relief was to go to the bar or go to the gym. And so that's really when I think wellness came into my view about there's more to this than just exercising harder and watching what you eat. So we use what we call our 6 tenets of wellness as our guide, both for employees to do a daily checklist for themselves, but also for I and my team to make sure we're covering the gamut of what wellness is for our employees. So for us, those 6 tenets are thoughts, breathing, hydration, nutrition, movement, and rest. So we really look to create opportunities for our employees to learn about, engage in, and ultimately develop their own strategies around how those things can work. I think one of the simplest things you can do for someone is teaching the benefit of their breath. Breathing is both diagnostic and therapeutic. And if you can teach someone the benefit of taking a minute just to count your inhalations and exhalations, not feel bad about it if it's too high, but show them how valuable that can be, I think that can be one of those triggers that takes people into other aspects of that. Or just drinking more water. Understanding the benefit, even just, what do they say? A small percentage of dehydration, not being dehydrated, but a small percentage of not being properly hydrated has an ill effect on cognitive function and mood. And when we at LinkedIn say relationships matter, well, how simple is it to just have a little bit more water and not exclude everything else? Because there's a lot of other fun things to drink, and those are fine too, but a little bit more water going to make you sharper, going to make you less likely to maybe snap at a coworker or a loved one at home. So I think it's those little things that can tie back into fitness, and fitness is a huge draw. You can definitely bring a lot of people into the fray, but it's easy to lose sight of those people who don't like that or don't have that background where they're comfortable doing those sorts of things.
Well, true fitness and even well-being shouldn't be that difficult. I think we're moving away from this adage of saying, no pain, no gain, and you've got to break yourself to make yourself, into saying that to the things that you just talked about.
I've never heard that one. Break yourself.
Yeah,
to make
neither.
yourself.
That's a good one. I like that.
Do you like that one? Maybe it's in my head. Maybe it's in my head. It's the voices in my head. But even simple to just saying drinking water. I like to talk about movement, but just moving around. You don't have to think about, oh, I've got to go. Like I did solidcore at 6 a.m. this morning, which is painful and hard. You don't have to do that, but just going for a 20-minute walk or just walking around the room. And so, how do you incorporate this idea of movement? And look, we've talked about, do we look at like wearables? I mean, how do you kind of track activity? How do you make sure people are, could be active while working? How do you kind of incorporate some of that into the teachings?
Sure. Well, one thing I would say, using movement as an example, and even rest versus sleep. So our tenets, 2 of them are movement and rest, and they're intentionally not called exercise and sleep. Because one, not everyone wants to move, or exercise, I should say. And even if people that want to, I mean, you all travel a lot, sometimes it just isn't in your day. I mean, you're in an airport all day, delays, you don't have a chance to go to the gym, but you have a chance to move. And we're dynamic beings. We're designed to be in motion. And so I think one is just raising people's awareness to the ill effects of being stagnant. So it's just even teaching people, set a reminder, little tidbits like 90 to 120 minutes is about the length of time that maximum we should be stationary. So setting an alarm, or just being conscious of how long you've been on a call, or writing code, or looking at a spreadsheet. And even if it's just getting up from your desk or workspace and going to get a drink of water. So I think movement is really important in that capacity, and easier to teach to someone. We teach a really basic exercise we call TYI, which is just sort of, if you put your arms in a T, a Y, and an I formation, just like getting this movement, and kind of that one thing it does is you're moving. You're also incorporating breathing, because you teach them to synchronize your breath with the movement, and you're being mindful, because you're not thinking about these other things. You're like, well, how is my arm positioning? And so they're in that moment. So that's one way we try to kind of wrap it all together. And even on the rest sleep component. So sleep obviously is the macro of rest. People struggle with it. One reason why they struggle with it is because they don't take any rest throughout the course of a day. I always say to people, if you worry about your sleep when you're going to go to bed, it's too late.
Yeah.
You should have been thinking about it. We say good rest starts in the morning. We're not designed to be elevated all day long. And I think that's a lot of people's goal is, I'm going to wake up, I elevate. Well, obviously there's natural elevation because the sun is up and you do different things. You caffeinate, you exercise, and they do their damnedest to stay up here. And I always said, like, your natural energy graph.
That sounds like me.
Yeah. Well, if you chart your natural energy, our ebbs and flows of the day, if you were to, it looks, like a nice graph, nice flow. But a lot of people, if you charted it, it would elevate and it would look at tabletop. And we say, that's what you want to try to avoid.
Yeah.
And how do you avoid that? Well, you take advantage of those. Sometimes it's putting time on your calendar. Our former CEO used to always say, nature abhors a void. And I think that applies to our day. So if you say, oh, I'll get to that, you won't. But if you put it on your calendar, even if it's just 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes, 5 minutes to do some breathing, or just reserve some time for yourself, that allows you to more naturally take advantage of the rest cycles that support sleep, mindfulness, making better food choices, making better drink choices, and the whole 9 yards.
LinkedIn are clearly known as being a innovative technology company. You talked a little bit about the use of points to get people to do certain activities. So tell us a little bit about, I guess, how you approach what you do from a technology perspective, and also maybe elaborate a little bit on this sort of point system as well.
Sure. So from the point system perspective, I started the wellness program in 2010. We didn't actually introduce our point system until about 2012. And one of the reasons for it was just to give people a little extra motivation or incentive. Actually, let me go back just a second. I used to teach these fitness classes. We called them in-shape classes. And they were 5 days a week. There were 3 of them a day. And people would come to them pretty religiously. But in my mind, I exercised because I played sports. So I didn't even think about exercise. I was like getting ready for your next season. And I played, American football. And so to me, it was like, you get ready for Saturdays. That's what you're getting ready for, Friday night or Saturday afternoon. And I'm like, why are these people doing stuff? Why are they coming out and doing this? Because every day was the same. It was like exercise. And so I designed Fridays to be like game day. And so every Friday we would have like a challenge that I would create. One was called the Eagle. And the Eagle we had this big field. And so an Eagle was 3 plyometric exercises in a row. And then you ran this loop around the field. And then you moved back the other way doing 3 medicine ball exercises and ran around the field the other way. That was one Eagle. And you had 30 minutes to do as many Eagles as you could. And every time you set a personal best, which obviously would be the first time you showed up or beating the time, I bought these little miniature football helmets, and they were like $1 a piece. And people went gaga for these helmets. I mean, people didn't even like football, or their favorite team wasn't there, or they just wanted these little helmets. And they started putting them on their cubicles, and we had an internal system called Cinco that was like our intranet, and people created a tag called Tiny Helmeteers. And people were like, well, how do I get one of those? How do I do that? It's like, well, you go to these wellness classes, you do this different stuff. And obviously, point systems are not new or unique, whether it be your credit card or airlines, whatever. And so I think that whole concept came into being around how can we do this? I do find it can be motivating, though anecdotally talking to people, I find half the people do things for points and half the people do things just because they want to do those things and they'll get the points. What I found to be a huge benefit was the points are only redeemable in our online reward store. And everything in our store, it's majorly clothing, not all clothing, but it has the wellness logo on it. Suddenly around campus, you just see wellness logo. And people are like, well, how do I get that? Well, you gotta go take this class. You gotta earn points. You gotta do this. And so I felt it really did a great job of helping to market the company as well. But also from a technology perspective, we have great technology. Our products and services are second to none. Internally though, it's a little bit more challenging. One, when we use third-party technology, it's really challenging because we have an extremely stringent house security review process that is not easy to pass. Secondly, we don't really invest in that. We invest in the people. Like you mentioned, I have a team of 5. Not many organizations have 6 full-time employees dedicated to wellness. All of them are investing in these platforms, which are great. They can be very useful to an organization that has maybe one person responsible for a wellness program, along with a bunch of other programs as well. So everything is sort of outsourced. They can be really beneficial if you're structured that way. But they're expensive. I mean, to be honest. And they don't necessarily drive the engagement you would love to see from the amount of money you're spending. But to your point about technology, it's a bit of a struggle. Though we're starting to leverage a lot of different things. Our technology team has built an app for our employees that they can order coffee from the coffee bar ahead of time, the way like I did do for Phil's Coffee. They have our classes on there, so people can now sign up for classes on the app. Instructors can check them in on the app so that we can, track their attendance and issue those wellness points. So we wish we could leverage technology more, but it's an investment, obviously, to get that sort of thing. We also have great engineers, and they could hack something in a minute. The problem is maintenance, right? It's like, do you have eyes on that when things break or change and things of that nature? So,
well, listen, it's been great to have you on. I've known you for so many years. I love what you guys are doing. We're both big LinkedIn users. We love the platform as well, as a lot of people at this conference. I mean, LinkedIn, as a side note, has really grown since the time you've been there into a very kind of niche network to now what I would say is a very mainstream network. I mean, my son, who's 15, just opened up his first LinkedIn account.
That's great.
So I think you're kind of seeing it become more mainstream. We are ending the series here at the Connected Health and Fitness Summit by asking our guests, do you have a recent personal hack or wellness tip that you've learned that you'd like to share?
Oh, a personal wellness hack. Let's think about that for just a second. That's a great question. Let me think about what so we have a return to office. So we've been going back into the office 3 days a week. I take a train, I have a long train ride, but so I've been making use of that time to do different self-care, whether it be more consistent with my mindfulness practice. It's a 2-hour train ride. So I usually spend the first...
Each way?
Each way.
Wow. Okay.
Which, people are like, oh, I'm like, there's 2 things that are great about it. One, it's in Northern California. It's very scenic. It's a great train ride in that capacity. One, it beats the heck out of sitting in traffic, having to drive your own car in that capacity. It's also really challenging to find 2 hours in a day where no one bothers you except for like one time to show your ticket and you can go back to doing whatever you want to do. So I've been able to be more consistent with that time. So I spend the first like 45 minutes maybe doing email because the Wi-Fi is good for the first 45 minutes of the trip. And then when we're going through the mountains of the Altamont Pass where all these big windmills are, internet's no good. I then always go to some sort of mindfulness practice, whether it be use the Insight timer or just use like the app on my Apple Watch to just hear like, the river sound. So I would say it's the gift has been the time, and the hack is making use of the technology that we have to be more consistent with my mindfulness practice.
That's a really good point. I just want to add to that is, and I wonder if anyone's going to do this research, because when you look at hybrid work, and we used to all drive into the office, commute into the office, I used to take the train into New York, a lot of that time was me time. Would read a book, would catch up on the news, listen to a podcast, even if you were to walk to work. Now that people are working from home, that goes away. So you're kind of missing the front and the back end of the me time. And it's important to incorporate that in, whether it's in your calendar or something else.
Yeah.
But Michael, thank you so much for coming on.
No, Jess, it's great
Thanks,
to be with you.
Michael.
Thanks for having me.
You got it.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got Mr. Troy Casey, certified health nut. Mo, you better tell us a story about being in the elevator, because I think that's kind of an amusing start to this
Right,
section.
so I came down earlier, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this, but I thought you were Wim Hof, the Iceman,
Nice.
who I have a lot of respect for. In fact, I was with Jeff Yasuda. We were going to lunch, and I'm like, that's Wim Hof. He said, because we just saw your back, he said, it is Wim Hof. So I wasn't the only one. I wasn't the only one, because I've seen him. I've done breathwork sessions with him. So I was about to come up to you, who I thought was Wim, but like, hey, Wim, good to see you again. I'm kind of glad I didn't. And then when I came down here, I just said I saw Wim Hof. You're like, no, you didn't. I know exactly who it was. It's Troy Casey, and we're going to have him on the podcast. So
Yeah.
nice to meet you.
Awesome. Thank you for the compliment. I adore Wim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a little bit different to what you normally, and to kind of the corporate side. Like, what's your experience from the sessions today then?
Well, I think it's fantastic, and I was talking to Newton and Michael from LinkedIn and Newton from Google, and I think it's fantastic that wellness is being brought into the corporate space. I think wherever there's affluence and influence, I think the message can spread. My mission is to get to the masses through viral activity, aesthetics, entertainment, etc. But anyway, it works. And I think the fact that Newton had 180,000 and Michael had 18,000 employees at LinkedIn, that's a lot of people to be carrying holistic or fitness principles, wellness principles to people, and I think that's fantastic. So the more we can take it to the masses, and any direction is a great direction for me.
Well, it's incredibly influenced that groups like this have. We had a dinner last night, and if you recall, I kind of tallied up the number. So we had all of these key executives from really big organizations, and individually, you might, okay, it's like 100 million here, 200 million, you don't really do it. So I added it all up. So we had about 25 people at dinner, and it was 2.5 billion lives impacted, 2.5 billion. And I know it was a long-winded little talk I gave, going through all the big numbers.
Yeah.
But you don't realize that together, even in a room of, we have almost 500 people here, this is meaningful impact.
Yes.
Right. But one of the issues, what I've always found, has been awareness, right? Like knowing that doing the incremental thing is going to have this compound effect and impact, and not expecting that it's going to come from your insurance company or some sort of law. No, it comes under personal responsibility, and that's the challenge that we've had, is to say that you've got the power. It just like you wake up, you go to the bathroom, you put your pants on, right? You've got to invest in your health, and it needs to become natural, but it isn't for most people. So do you have any insight into why do you think the things that clearly the three of us appreciate and invest in, and it's natural for us, right? Like this is a natural thing for us. What do you think we could do to build that awareness for the masses?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of my job, is simplifying it and making it basic, like you're talking to a 5-year-old, making it accessible. And I've identified at least 9 pillars of health for my curriculum. Nothing new under the sun. That's the other thing I like to teach, because people think they have to get the new gadget or the blood test or the genetic test. But the fact of the matter is, we need sunlight, we need grounding. We're electromagnetic beings. The body moves, a body in motion stays in motion. So the body requires movement until the day you die. It's a good idea to optimize your breathing apparatus and your diaphragm, because that's the first form of nutrition next to sunlight. We sleep, that's where the anabolic phase, and we restore our body. So it's a good idea to wrap our minds around circadian hygiene. And just the basics over and over again, because we can get more mileage out of doing the basics rather than trying to outrun our bad diet in a CrossFit gym and injure ourselves, or more high intensity when we're already stressed to the gills. Our cortisol is going through the roof. And I get a lot of my clients on walking protocols. Like, walking is the best exercise for the human body. It's the way we're designed to move through time and space. If you can do that consistently, that's exercise enough program for most people. And so I like to keep it simple, dumb it down, make it accessible. It's all about integration and embodiment. If I've got a big, bright idea and Troy Casey's out there doing breath work, that might not be right for you. So let's find out what works for you. Because if I tell you to do something that doesn't work for you, throw that away. It's like the Bruce Lee, study with everyone, take what's useful, make it your own, discard the rest. And so just simplifying it over and over again, and whatever you can implement into the body and get into your program, then good for you. So it becomes second hat. The holistic program becomes just part of the lifestyle.
Are seated machines slowing your members down? With many people spending the whole day sitting in their car, at the office, and in front of screens, then you have to ask yourself, should you really be sitting down when you're exercising? As seated machines do not promote all body movement, then a solution that encourages standing, putting the body in an upright position, will make workouts more effective. Help your members break from sedentary habits with more active training. Are you interested in creating a more dynamic workout environment? Then contact us today.
You've had a lot of experience in high-level marketing. Your early years at when you was at Versace and in the fashion industry, and clearly you understand about managing brands and communicating messages. What are some of the messages from the fitness industry that frustrate you at the moment, and that your part of your mission is to maybe slightly change and align it to some of your beliefs, would you say?
Well, one of my biggest pet peeves is the use of TRT, steroids, peptides, drugs, Adderall, these types of things. Drugs have their use them all day long. They work like a charm, right? I did plenty of drugs in my younger years. Drugs work, right? But if you're leading as an influencer or as a fitness person, and you're not telling people your secret diet and exercise program that includes drugs, then that's deception. And so I have pet peeve with that. If you're using it, great, announce that. Huberman talks about him being on TRT. I think RFK has talked about it. Joe Rogan's talked about it. Great. But if you are some type of influencer and you have a very rigid and cut body, because I've got a book, I created that, but that was through fasting and natural protocols. I actually gained 25 pounds since I wrote Ripped at 50. And I do believe it's more important to have dense muscle than being shredded, jacked, ripped, etc. Healthy long term. And so it's a bit of an illusion, especially if you're on drugs. And then I have clients that are my age. I'll be 60 this year, but I have clients in their 40s and their 50s, and I want to be Brad Pitt in Fight Club. Well, there was drugs involved with that. I want to be Thor and the Marvel characters. Well, there's drugs involved with that. Are you aware of that? And most people are not. And so I think more transparency, and that's what you see Callie Means and RFK talking about. Drugs are great. Let's have transparency and truth in the science. Let's have transparency and truth in the influence is my thing. And then people can choose, because with all drugs, you have side effects. When I work with clients and they have problems that they're dealing with in life, are you on medical drugs? Yes, I am. Okay, go to the manufacturer's website and download all the side effects. And lo and behold, 99% of the time, their problems they're coming to me for are right there in the side effects for the drugs that they are taking. So I think more awareness on that. I do believe that Fitbits, gadgets, gimmicks, red light therapy, they have application in the world, right? I use them myself. But if you're not getting sunlight, if you're not getting grounding, because you're electromagnetic beings, we've got magnetism from the earth, electricity from the sun. If you're not getting nature and sunlight and grounding into your body, why do you need red light therapy? Right?
But I think, one, and you bring up so many good points, but I've learned as a society that a lot of people just want to be told what to do, and they want to be followers. They want to be sheep, right? So they don't want to, it's funny because we live in this age where information, especially with apps like Perplexity now, they're literally available. It's better than Google. You can find the information that you want. You could listen to podcasts as a medium, like the one we're doing today. But at the end of the day, They just want to kind of follow what the masses are doing, right? So if you're told to do this, and there is no transparency in a healthcare system. There is no transparency in a pharmaceutical system. You could go to the hospital, it's one of the only places you can go to. Maybe college education is one below that. And you go for a service and you don't know what you're paying for. There's no transparency in billing. And you don't know what your service is being, you don't know how much your drugs are, you don't know how much your stay is, and you get the bill after. And ideally, you don't even see the bill because it goes to your insurance company. And when you look at drugs, I mean, there's no transparency in, the first thing they should tell you is there something you could do naturally? But our system isn't trained for that, right? So
Correct.
Right?
It's the system.
It's the system.
It's the system that we're involved with, and the system is intertwined with the other systems like commerce, business, currency,
incentives,
media.
To me, it's incentives. So for instance, we have built a healthcare or sick care system that is incentivized on people being sick. And staying sick and getting sick, right? We are here to talk about this, health and wellness conference. The actual world and the institutions that we've created, and this is, I want to come back to the awareness question here, isn't designed for you to walk every day. Because if you walk every day, the pharmaceutical companies, the healthcare companies, they don't make any money, right? So then comes to awareness. So because they have way bigger budgets than our industry does in fitness, they win the awareness game today.
Correct.
Today they win the awareness game because we cannot afford to spend what an Eli Lilly's going to be spending on GLP-1. How about the Hims and Hers commercial and what they did in the Super Bowl, buying that piece for advocating for GLP-1? No one spent the equal amount to say, walk 10 more minutes a day. That's all they have to do. Just walk.
Well, I postulate that I'll put that in sweat equity in myself. I'll make 30 videos in 4 hours for my Instagram channel, and then I'll go throughout the week making multiple pieces of content today, tomorrow, and I'm like the Energizer bunny rabbit. So I'm going to get somebody's attention in the long run. And then I'm also going to guide them back to themselves and to nature and the truth. And so it's a war of attrition, and you can have capital, and that is a big war, right? But we all know that jungle warfare is what wins wars, right?
I like that analogy. Okay.
Well, that's how we won the American Revolution,
yeah.
right? You shoot and then you hide behind a tree. And so, and might doesn't always make right, but
what about training? Like, you work with a lot of trainers. You've also been a student and still are, from what I understand. What can individual people, trainers, small business people do you think? And you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but how do we get that message out? And also in an age where there's all kinds of confusing information out there, and it could easily come across as you're this crackpot, don't really understand what you're talking about. Where's your credibility?
That's usually when I rip off my shirt, Matthew. I'm 60 this year, so you can call me a crackpot all day long. And I have plenty of esoteric practices that people like to make fun of me. But the more you make fun of them, the more viral they go. And so Brian Johnson and Plates Over Dates guy were just looking at my videos recently. And both those guys have been on Joe Rogan, and they're talking about me. And Brian Johnson had those big eyes. He hadn't thought about the practice that I practice. And this is just an ancient yogic practice, and it's becoming a little bit more popular, especially since there's been some poison injections over the years that are causing serious problems. And when people are at their end of their rope and they have no cure, then they usually find their way to Shivambu, which is in the ancient Vedic scriptures. And
what's that, Shivambu?
Shivambu is urine therapy.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Edward Group, Dr. Brian Ardis is onto it. And so that's just, one component, right? I can catch them at the viral wow over there. But again, going back to taking off my shirt at my age and having the vibrancy in my skin, hair, and nails, not wearing sunscreen, and I got kicked off or penalized on TikTok because of disinformation or dangerous information. I don't tell what people should do. I just say, I haven't worn sunscreen in decades, literally. And so that's dangerous information, apparently. And so we can only lead by example, ultimately. And I see that many people, and the Google executive talked about it today, Newton, people are facing burnout. We're underneath these synthetic lights. We're driving in cars, our hip flexors are shut down, our glutes go after our gut, and our hip flexors and our glutes, they're all connected. And so, in the seat of your power is in your ass, right? That's where the deadlifts and the squats come in. And so those are very important, and you're going to need your energy for that. And if you are sitting underneath lights and sitting in your car driving every day, you're going to have to work around that to re-energize, revitalize, bring that vigor back into life. And I think nature has always had the solutions. And nature is so simple. The antidote for complexity as we've created in this world today is always simplicity and getting back to nature. And you're in the fitness industry for many years, and you've interviewed many of the greats from Gold's Gym, my old stomping grounds, and Muscle Beach, where we did our first interview. And what did these guys do in the 70s? They hung out on the beach. They lifted and they trained and they ate, and they usually had a sponsor like Joe Weider that maybe would sponsor their actual efforts if they were good and had good genetics. But this is the life. This is before, there was drugs involved then as well, and I don't think many people were hiding it as much back then either. And so Arnold was very forthwith with the information, and I think that's great if an athlete is going to do that. Be forthwith. Who's the big BJJ guy? Gordon Ryan. He's like, I do steroids. It's not illegal. Great. But getting back to the basics, look at the cornerstone of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Clean diet, good sleep, stretching. It's all this holistic stuff. There's nothing new under the sun.
There's one more question. I'll let you.
There's one more question. And I was thinking about this because I don't know where you're going to potentially take it, because the question that we've been asking our guests for this conference series is, if you had a new wellness or personal hack or learning that you've implemented recently, what would it be?
Something new that I've practiced recently? I've been practicing, we covered a lot of it on your podcast. I'll let people go back to that. But, I bumped up my sunlight recently. Okay. My business partner stays with me in Scottsdale quite a bit. We share meals. He shops at the farmer's market. He's got titanium cookware. My daughter lives with us. We're slow cooks all day long and eating really good food. And the brother likes to hang out in the sun, even if it's 115 degrees, for 2 hours a day, minimum, naked. So he's been inspiring me, and I'm like, okay, let me bump my game up. Yeah. And so I'm getting more sun.
How have you felt?
And I like it. I feel amazing, and I'll share this with you too as well. I heard good things about methylene blue, and I've been exposed to mold.
You brought that up.
Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned that
And
before.
I'm
interested in this.
And I've been exposed to mold, and I've had brain fog, and it's supposed to be very good for that, cognitive function, et cetera. And Dr. John Lawrence, the big cowboy chiropractor out in Sarasota, Florida, he's got a pharmaceutical grade. And I took that, and I instantly got results, not only with red light therapy, but also out in the sun.
Well, when you combine them, it kind of brings on the methylene blue effects. Is that?
Oh, yeah. I noticed a huge difference. And I think the research shows that methylene blue is not right for everyone. There are methylation pathways, et cetera. And so you have to find out if it's right for you. But I got really good results from it. And actually, I'm doing this whole theory on colds. And I've been telling people my experience traveling from New York and back, getting a tickly throat, taking the methylene blue, it really scratching my throat, but then knocking it out, giving it to my kids, same thing. And then I tried it again. I got a little scratchy throat again. So my whole theory on methylene blue is it's also working on the immune system. So I'm enjoying that, and I'm just enjoying a lot of sunlight. 3, 4, 5 years ago, I was doing a lot of ice baths, and I got on Netflix as well, doing ice baths on one of my friend's comedy show. And you even think I'm Wim Hof, which is great, and I love Wim. I'm not doing so many ice baths right now. I still do them, but not every day like I was. And, balancing out my adrenal energy and, always working on being my best ninja, wizard, Jedi, and just navigating surfing the wave of consciousness.
Okay.
I love it. All right, Troy, thank you so much. Great.
Thanks so much, Troy. Appreciate it.
Catch up.
So Sam O'Keefe, you are the co-founder of Flex along with McGill Toledo. We're excited to have you on L.I.F.T.S.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, so there's a lot which I want to kind of talk to you about. First is you're partnering with L.I.F.T.S. to help broadcast the message of Flex and what you do. And we take partnerships very seriously. I mean, when we first talked about bringing partners on, we wanted to bring partners that we kind of believed in, right? We just didn't want to bring kind of anybody on. And we've had an opportunity to work together for about a year now. And we've looked at implementing the solution. We understand your technology, and I want to get into that here in a minute. But what I want to say, thank you for partnering with us, and hopefully, we'll get into some topics here. But yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, same here on our side. So yeah, I met Mo at last year's. We're here at the Connected Health and Fitness Summit. So last year I came in and really new to the industry, had some ideas about how we could connect health and healthcare. Met Mo and a bunch of others, and just have been really fortunate to, I think, hopefully really become a part of the community here. Now seeing a lot more familiar faces this year, and had the pleasure of working with SweatWorks over the past year as well.
Where you were a year ago, right? So we have a mutual connection in common that we did not know with Jeff Yasuda from Feed FM. But you had reached out to me, I think, before this to connect. And I was like, this is interesting. I don't know much about who Sam is. Never heard of her before. Did not know what Flex really does. But yeah, let's meet. But why don't you talk a bit about your background, and why how did you land to founding Flex? Because you have a lot of experience in enterprise, and we can talk about that, and also working with startups as well.
Yeah, so I started my career as a founder, very different space. I was in the HR technology space.
We are a lot more fun.
Yes. No question there. And then, after that company, I worked at TechCrunch. I was at Google for about 5 years, working with companies to use their cloud technology platform, and then most recently in fintech. So I like to say, I had this whole career kind of before Flex, working with developer tools, working with financial technology, but knew that, I wanted to start a business. I think it's a great way to really have impact. And when I thought about where do I want to do that, health kept coming up for me. Was a 3-sport athlete in college, very active. It's a big kind of personal passion, big part of my identity, I'd say. So I said, I want to do something here. And I kept coming back to this idea of why is health so disconnected from healthcare? And I think, this community that everyone kind of is on the same page, but in the broader, in the broader landscape, that was kind of a new idea a couple of years ago. And so I said, I want to find a way to bridge that gap. And originally, actually was looking at health insurance. How do we bring health insurance into this space? Well, I learned a lot about health insurance, and there are a lot of challenges there. Still a great path for some businesses. But I said, I'm not sure if that's the space for me. Where else can I bridge this gap? And that's kind of when I backed into HSAs and FSAs. And I think, when I started the business, I, like most people, I had heard of them. I had an HSA, but I was really underutilizing it. I didn't know where I could spend it, how I could spend it, really how that could impact my health. And when I started looking more into it, I realized, this is an infrastructure problem. This is actually something I can come out and help make things like fitness, things like everything we're seeing in the wellness space, whether it's supplements, sleep, wearables, et cetera. This can help bridge that gap. And that's something I'm really excited to spend the next 10 years working on.
So I want to ask you a question. I'm from England originally, moved here about 7.5 years ago, learning all about the medical system. And when you say HSA, HFA, when I talk to the company that's doing my medical, I see these initials on there. No idea what it means.
You kind of glaze over a little bit. You're like, okay, sure.
And so maybe if you're born in America and brought up with this may be understandable. But for me, just kind of, if you dumb it down a little bit. So what is this, and what does it mean?
Yeah, well, first let me say you're not alone. Just because you grew up here does not mean you really know or understand these accounts. And that's why they're so underutilized and such an awesome opportunity. So let's just level set. So we've got FSAs, flexible spending accounts. These are the use it or lose it accounts that people have a lot of fear around. You put money in, or your employer puts money in, and then at the end of the year, that money goes away if you haven't spent it. They've been around a long time. They came up in the 70s. They really became popular with employers in the 80s and 90s. And the thinking was, hey, let's allow employees to offset some of their healthcare spending. We're going to contribute to this pool of funds that they can spend on what's called qualified medical expenses.
Is the reason they did that is because it's tax-free or something? Is that
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So benefit to the employer, benefit to the employee.
So where do the funds go if you don't use it?
They go back to the employer.
Okay.
Yeah. Now there are some restrictions around what they can do with it, but ultimately you as an employee, you lose a benefit, right? And that can be thousands of dollars a year, right? That can be pretty meaningful. And a lot of people do lose money. I think it's like somewhere between $4 and $6 billion a year consumers are not spending out of these accounts, usually because they don't know where to spend them, they don't know how to spend them, et cetera. That's just going back to the employer. So it's a real missed opportunity for people to be investing in their health.
And on that, just to clarify then, so let's say a company puts in, I'll round it off, $1,000 a month.
That would be very generous.
Okay,
That's
right. Okay, let's say $100 a month then. So it's going into this account, tax-free, and the employee can spend that on what?
Today, so these accounts, I should also say, they're kind of regulated by the IRS. So they can spend the funds on what are called qualified medical expenses. So historically, where we see the accounts being used, you can spend them at the doctor's office or at a hospital. You can also spend them on over-the-counter pharmacy items. I think the trope is like sunscreen and eyeglasses or contact lenses. Those are the things that historically they have been accessible with. Now, what is really exciting, and that's a big market, and some of those things are really critical to people's health. So I don't want to dismiss that. But what we're really excited about is expanding the category, right? All of this whole boom in consumer wellness, whether it's fitness, wearables, sleep, all of these things, mindfulness. There is a path that the IRS carves out. They don't have a master list that lists every single thing. They say, if something, a product, service is recommended by your doctor, that can be a qualified medical expense. So for example, my husband had a herniated disc last year. The first thing his doctor said is, you've got to go out and you've got to buy a new mattress, right? We were not going to make that purchase otherwise. So, that is now potentially a medical expense because it is being purchased to treat or manage a condition. And so when we think about, okay, now there's a much larger opportunity of space that people can spend these funds, that generally does drive impact for their health. So that's like, just some added context there about where you can deploy this funds.
Okay.
Yeah. And now we talked about FSAs. You want to talk about HSAs?
Yeah, let's do that one. Yeah.
So HSAs, I think of them kind of sister accounts. HSA is health savings account, whereas the FSA is attached to the employer. The HSA is attached to the individual. So these roll over year over year. If you change jobs, these funds are going to stay with you. So there tends to be higher account balances in them. You can have family accounts, so your spouse or your kids can also be covered. So the contribution limits are much higher there. And yeah, HSAs I think are a great tool for folks because again, they stay with them. So there's less of that end of the year frenzy and more, hey, this is an account I can spend on my health over time.
And how would you put money into that then as an individual? And is that the same situation when it comes to it being tax efficient?
Exactly. Yeah. So typically, the most common way is through your kind of employer payroll, right? You select your contributions; those are going to go into your HSA. I will say HSAs. Not everyone can open one. You have to have what's called a high deductible health plan. Now we're really getting into U.S. healthcare, right? So your deductible has to be at a certain amount. The last number I remember is about $1,600. So only a portion of the country is eligible for those, but high deductible health plans have grown massively in popularity. In 2010, they were maybe 10% of the market. They're over 30% of the market today. And, I think employers love them because they, potentially offset some of their costs going to the employee. But consumers also tend to like them. They give them a lot of choice, right? They're able to take those funds and spend them where it makes the most sense, as opposed to, the insurance just deciding what's what's covered. So yeah, those are the
Those
kind
are
of
the two ones.
two main accounts we're talking about
So you
here.
pay that into it yourself, and then what now? What kind of things would be relevant to someone who's interested in health and wellness and that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, maybe we should talk about how you spend this money, because I think that's probably helpful for, I don't know, when we talk to
because
brands, they're like, well, how does
because
this
you
work?
can't spend it everywhere, right? So
Correct.
You can't spend everywhere, so you got to get a qualified product, a qualified need. So I think that might be a good.
Yeah,
next one.
definitely. So before we get into how we help you do it, how it works today, most of these accounts will give you a debit card, and that has all of your funds on it.
Which I lose every year. do you ever keep your
I
HSA
don't have
debit
one,
card?
I don't think.
You probably have it.
It's probably, you know, it's not a card in your wallet today. It's
Right.
like up on a shelf. People forget about it, all kinds of stuff. So you're super common. So you do get this card, and the reason a lot of people lose it is that card is designed only to swipe at very specific types of businesses, namely hospitals, doctors' offices, pharmacies. You've got to have be classified as a healthcare business to have those cards swiped. So a lot of the companies we end up working with, you know, they're direct to consumer. They're selling something in the health space, but they're a e-commerce business, or they're a fitness studio, or they're, you know, any number of things. Those cards are going to decline for the most part. And so that's, you know, it just creates this friction. So what you have to do as a consumer now, you pay out of pocket, you get the receipt, you get reimbursed, or in the case you need a doctor's note, you're talking about paying out of pocket, get a receipt, get a doctor's note, take all that and file, right? No one knows you can do that, or very few people know you can do that. And even fewer people are actually going to take all the steps to do that, right? No one likes paperwork. And so, you know, what we're doing is we saw this problem, and I was like, okay, let's bring all of this together. So consumers can easily identify what is eligible where they're shopping, you know, and then actually be able to use the funds just straight on the card. Let's get those cards to swipe. Let's make it really easy. And then it becomes another card in your wallet, because you know you have, you know, $3,000, $5,000, $8,000, and you're not going to leave that on a shelf when you know, every merchant you go to, it's a payment option, right? So we're really long term, I think, changing the behavior and the attitude around where and how these funds get spent.
In the fitness industry, there's this intersection between, or there's a drive rather, into fitness, into healthcare. So fitness is kind of going upstream to healthcare.
Yeah.
Healthcare is also focusing more on prevention and wellness, and they're coming downstream into fitness.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gyms, digital apps, and just services in our industry think that are confused around what does integration with healthcare means.
Mm-hmm.
So we've seen press releases come out and say, this brand now is integrated with healthcare, and they've just put in FSA, HSA kind of benefits in front of them.
Yeah.
And then consumers think that, well, that means that I can use my insurance to pay for my gym membership, when it's really not that.
It's really not that. Yeah. And it is, you know, the US healthcare system is complex and hard to navigate. But yeah, I think that's an important distinction. So HSAs and FSAs, you know, there's a reason they're governed by the IRS, right? These are financial, like, think of it like a 401k, right? This is a type of financial account. This is to be spent on health, but it's generally, you know, it's not tied into your, you have to have a high deductible health plan to have an HSA, but it's kind of different lanes when you think about it. So if you're a fitness brand and you're thinking about how do I get, quote, covered by insurance, that tends to mean, hey, I'm going to go to United, or I'm going to go to Anthem. I'm going to showcase that I have a exercise program that meets certain clinical standards, that drives outcomes for people with various conditions, and then they're going to cover my program, right? And that's
if you're qualified.
If you're qualified,
Yes.
you know, if you actually get through that whole process with a United or an Anthem, which is quite long, and the standard of proof is very high there, right? So that's kind of that world, and we do see some people, especially as fitness and moves more into the holistic wellness space, like fitness can be a component of a treatment program that insurance does cover, whether it's for diabetes or osteoporosis or things. HSAs and FSAs are a little bit different in the sense that you don't need to go to Anthem or United or any of these players. What you need to do is, help educate your community about this option and make it easy for them to use the accounts that they already have, or maybe if they have an opportunity to open one. There's about 100 million of these accounts in the US, so it's fairly widespread, but still more opportunity there. You need to educate them, say, hey, this can be applied if you qualify. and we can talk about that. This can be applied, and here's a really easy path to do it, and that's usually through some type of partnership, because ultimately the fitness studio and others, they're not a clinical provider, they're not a payments organization, right? And those are the things you need to make it really seamless for people to deploy those funds.
So maybe let's talk through, if you are a fitness studio or a gym, how, I guess, what part of their members would qualify for something like this?
Yeah.
And how could they potentially access those funds?
Yeah.
Because does it pay for your gym membership? Can you use it for that? Like, what are things you can use it for?
Yeah, you can. What the IRS kind of provides some guidance here, and it says in order to spend these funds, you have to be, and I'm gonna mess up the exact quote, but essentially you have to be managing, treating, preventing, et cetera, a condition. So if you come in and you say, I'm perfectly healthy, I just work out because I feel good and I look good, that's not a medical expense.
It should be.
It should. I mean,
right.
Personally, exercise, every study that's coming out, and this inherently, but now there's all of this clinical research. Exercise is like the best medicine. It's good for everything, and everyone's got something, right? So we're getting there.
So it's like if you do the right thing, you can't leverage the benefit.
But the qualifying criteria are quite broad, right? So it can be, I consider myself, young, healthy, and I qualify for in three different ways. So we qualify around any type of metabolic condition, any cardiovascular condition, mental health can qualify you, injury recovery can qualify you, and so when you start thinking about what % of the population actually falls into either, hey, I'm very high risk for one of these, and so this is part of my, treatment, or I'm, need it to manage this, even GLP-1s, I feel like people are talking about all the time here. You need to combat the loss of muscle mass if you're on one of those medications. Therefore, this is tied into your medical treatment. It can be. So things like weightlifting, et cetera. So the ability to classify is quite broad because exercise is so effective. There are other businesses, that we work with where the number of qualified, I use my husband's back as an example, right? There aren't that many conditions in the mattress, that's going to qualify a mattress. It's pretty focused on specific back conditions for the most part, chronic pain, things like that. Exercise is very, very broad because it is so largely beneficial.
So in terms of if a gym wants to implement an FSA, HSA program, how would they, market to their members? Because I guess you've got to communicate all that to your members, and that seems like a whole lot.
It seems like a lot. Well, first give me a call. But we ultimately you're going to end up partnering with someone, and if they do their job well, it should really be very minimal overhead for the gym or studio owner, whether that's at the individual level or at scale. And there's kind of two paths forward. The first, and that what we've seen be popular to kind of get up and running, is, hey, we're going to send you some marketing materials, right? Whether that's email, signage, et cetera, and you refer your members to us. So send them to Flex. We're going to give you a specific URL for your gym, and we're going to take them through the very quick qualification. We use a chat-based kind of health consultation to qualify folks. We're going to get them the appropriate documentation, and we're going to tell them how to file for reimbursement. So you as a gym owner, you're just kind of taking our kind of out-of-the-box assets and sharing them with your community. Any questions they have, any concerns, they come to us, right? The other path, and what we're really excited about long-term, is eliminating all of the paperwork. And that is where we get into the point of sale. We get into that online checkout that you're doing. So in the same way that you see, a PayPal or an Affirm in, these different systems, or maybe Pay with ACH, I think is quite popular in the fitness
I got
community.
An Aura from my mum at Christmas, and that had, I think that had something on the bottom of the checkout where you could do something there.
Yeah, so Aura is a great example. We work with Ultrahuman. We work with actually a number of companies in the wearable space, but you could see it. The vision is that same experience would be available in fitness. So you're going to buy your membership, and at checkout, you say, oh, pay with HSA, FSA. You see a little blurb. Okay, that's how I think I qualify. Let me take that option. And you can do that right at the point of sale, or you can do that right in the online checkout. Get qualified, use that card to pay directly, put your subscription on that card, right? You're paying monthly, put it there, and eliminate, all of the paperwork. So that's really where, we see the future of this industry. And, if you're a gym owner, why do that? Consumers think of this as kind of as I said, $4 to $6 million lost every year. That's a lot of funds that they could be spending with you. You actually do drive health outcomes.
So would you be like in that scenario, if that was when you order your gym membership, there's a little thing there. Would me as an individual then just get a discount in my monthly payments with that?
What it's going to look like, so you're going to pay, if the gym's $100, you're still going to be paying $100. But because all those contributions were pre-tax, typically the actual cost to you as the consumer is about 30% less. Higher tax bracket, more savings. You can see up to 40%, but that's on average.
And does that come off at the end of the year? Or when would you see that? Like when you do your tax returns?
What you'll see, so if you think about like your paycheck, right, you're typically taxed on everything you get paid. You're taking out a couple $1,000s. You're taxed now on a lesser amount out of that paycheck. So it is a little, consumers are getting more educated on this, but it is still $100 at the checkout. It's not $70, right? And I think sometimes that can be a little surprising to folks. So I appreciate the question because it's in the background that you're kind of saving on that tax.
How far away do you think we are then for gyms and studios to be able to include that into their order process?
Not far. We work with a number of partners that are already doing it in some form. I think, the member management systems and other kind of like POS systems in the space are starting to hear from them and say, hey, we are interested in this. Our members are looking for this. Because ultimately, it makes accessing fitness cheaper. It makes it less expensive. It reduces that burden, which, for some people is a real factor. And what we see in terms of how that manifests is higher retention, right? I think fitness has such a challenge to keep people engaged. And if you make it, when you're looking at your budget and things are getting tight, it can be one of the first things that people drop. And so by accepting this method of payment, a gym can maybe retain people. We see, 10-15% longer than they would otherwise. And so that's a financial benefit to the studio, but it's, ultimately a health benefit to the consumer as well.
So if there is a gym then, and they're like, hey, I want to be able to offer that, what would they need to do? How involved would they be? Is it a case of just ringing you up and you guys take care of it? Just talk through that process a little bit.
Yeah. So today, it is, the ring us up and hey, we're gonna set you up. You don't have to really do too much, and it is that we can get you set up with that reimbursement flow. So hey, you just refer members to us, and we're gonna take care of them from there. We're gonna remind them. We're gonna help them navigate the paperwork. That's kind of what's really easy today. What we're really working on, and my team's very excited about, is that point of sale integration is how do we make this really seamless at the end of the day? And so we're here talking to potential partners about how do we make that happen at the end of the day.
I mean, there's honestly no good reason why every gym or fitness product should not have an FSA HSA option. Like there's actually no reason for why they shouldn't do it. Every single one, if you're selling to a consumer, you should do it. If you're just B2B, like the business that we are both, then it doesn't make sense for us to do it.
Yeah.
But if you are a gym or you have a fitness product or a health-related product, everyone should have an FSA HSA option. What is exciting about Flex is that they've integrated it into the checkout, and what's coming is they're going to integrate it into the member management workflow. So that's really exciting. The other part, so that to me is the baseline. Everyone should be doing it. Then you go a level up for an insurance integration, and now you can get reimbursed by insurance for actual weight loss programs. So you mentioned GLP-1 earlier, and that's a whole nother, and we've done episodes, and that's a whole nother thing.
You guys have a whole separate podcast on that one?
A whole separate thing on GLP-1s. But for people who are listening, FSA HSA does not give you a GLP-1 integration. Correct. It is not actually integrating with your insurance company either. That's a really important difference. So I want to just speak about that for a minute. If you qualify for a GLP-1 based program, the gym could partner with an insurance company to do that. The insurance company would pay for the GLP-1 medication, and they might even pay for a weight loss program that is tied to that GLP-1 medication or treatment for about 6 months. And they can do that, but that is a much higher degree of difficulty and integration that if you are a gym, my recommendation has always been like, if you don't have FSA, HSA, you gotta like call Sam.
Start there.
You
right?
gotta start there. Everyone has to do it.
It's a great accessible starting point. And then, if it makes sense for your business, if you're building out these, more holistic programs, cater on certain treatment, then start to take a look at insurance, right?
So on that though, like it's a competitive market. A lot of people are offering similar products. If you think about where things are going from your side and putting together a 2 to 3 year plan, where do you see, are there any areas that businesses could be thinking about that would align to where things like insurance are going, such as, all right, well, we should be thinking about maybe incorporating a GLP-1 program, and the cost of that, if we did it this way, would mean that it could be more affordable, or what would be some of the things, if any, that you could sort of give people some takeaways to say, well, here's some areas that you could be thinking about that are not currently available at the moment to people. Or do you, are you thinking, is there anything that, like you gave me the GLP-1 example of the program, like that was something that sparked the question, I guess. So,
well, I think the first one is, ultimately, when it's FSA, HSA, you're using available tax-free dollars, and that's going to save you anywhere from 30% or more. Let's just say 30 to 40%. So that's meaningful from a savings perspective. It's still not using insurance money that you spend into insurance to pay for that Oura Ring or to pay for a preventative care service. I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see that. We're going to start seeing that there will be more pressure, from, the federal or state authorities to come in and say, okay, and the IRS is also going to push back. The IRS is also going to say, hey, we need to collect some revenue here, right? So why is, because the more people that use this, it's the less revenue that the IRS gets to do the things that they need to do. So they're going to say, insurance companies, you have to start paying for some of these services. I think that's ultimately where this is going, but we're not there yet today. So for today, the easiest thing to do is to put on an FSA, HSA integration, so your member, and then educate the member, because even if you have it, this is another big problem I've seen is people will launch it, but then they don't do enough messaging, and the messaging isn't just one announcement, but you've got to constantly educate it. Look at Oura as an example, right? You saw the label. Not that the ring for your mom would qualify, because that would not be. No. But for your Oura ring, if you have, do you know if your insurance covers? You probably do. You probably have an HSA program. We certainly offer it, so we have that. But then you could get a product to pay for that, and you're paying a little bit less. So let's just say you spend, $500 a month on your wellness. Potentially, 30% of that could be saved, and that's meaningful.
Is there a limit to what you can put through it?
Yes, there is a limit.
Yeah, there are annual contribution limits. So they're the IRS puts out updates every year. They tend to be indexed to inflation. So it's right now, FSAs are about $3,500 in contribution limit. HSAs, the family plans, could be $8,500. So that starts to get really, really meaningful.
So are there any other things then? You mentioned gym membership. Like if, let's say you're at a gym and you have a nutrition program and you're buying supplements, can you put things like that through it as well?
Absolutely. Yes. So yeah, we've talked mostly about in-studio fitness, but we work with equipment companies, we work with supplements, we work with nutrition programs, a variety of kind of these coaching platforms that are coming out, wearables. So, it's really, think of just anything in the consumer wellness space could potentially be a great fit for this. And we've spoken in this conversation mostly about products that require, this doctor's note, this letter of medical necessity. That is a big part of our business. But the other part, there are actually, Oura, you don't actually need a doctor's note. A lot of the wearables now are considered diagnostic, or they're considered at least health reporting, I should say. I have to be very careful because diagnostic carries some added terms with the. But
that's more clinical at that point.
Yes, that's a little bit more clinical. So that what they do is they're health monitoring devices, and so a number of scales, heart rate monitors, all of the rings, a number of the kind of the watches in that category, they're all kind of moving. They're becoming more and more health oriented. So those are things that now actually you don't need this letter of medical necessity. You fit in the same category as eyeglasses, sunscreen, over-the-counter products. So we do also see, a growing number of products becoming always eligible, which is super exciting. You still have that problem if you're selling those things that the HSA FSA card won't swipe. You need a system like us to make that happen under the hood. But it's just, the category is expanding in all directions, which is really exciting.
Well, we appreciate you coming on and walking us through this complex web. We'll probably have you back on again because your head's probably spinning. I could see the head spinning inside of you.
We need a whiteboard over here.
But the simple thing here is, if you don't have an FSA, HSA program, just go do it and then get educated on it because it does bring a lot of value to your members. And to your point, Sam, if your members can be more tied in and could see a savings, it should help in retention as well. So,
absolutely.
We're wrapping up, we're at this summit. And so we're wrapping up each interview by asking our guests for a personal health or wellness hack or something that you've uncovered recently that you're practicing.
Interesting. So I have young kids, and fitting in wellness is, I think, like many of us, we're very busy. We've got a lot going on. So fitting that into a schedule. So we go to the gym as a family, and in order for my husband and I to get our workout in, we will set up a little obstacle course for our son. So he, comes to our gym. And so it's kind of a hack. It's not really for me. It's more, to keep him entertained while we're working out. But, make sure that we get our time, we prioritize that. And then also, I think it's good to introduce kids really young to being active, to that's something that's just part of your lifestyle. And so, he goes up and down little, 25-pound plates and then does like 2 burpees and all these things. And he's 2.5. So, he'll do that once or twice and then need some other entertainment. But, it's a start. You got to start somewhere. So I'd say that's probably my biggest wellness hack is involve them in the family activity.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for your time today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sam. Welcome, Shane McCarthy. This is your first episode joining us on L.I.F.T.S, hopefully of many, many more. You are the Senior Vice President of Marketing and Digital at solidcore. You've been in the role for about 18 months. In fact, we were just talking about this. I met you during your first week on the job. And since you've absorbed, you were absorbing a lot then. You're continuing to absorb a lot about the industry and about just the business in general. But interestingly, I want to go here for a segment. Talk to the audience about where you came from before fitness.
So I came from consumer tech. So I worked as an engineer in a past life, then moved into sort of product and marketing, back in the glory VC days where they were spending billion-dollar valuations on Flappy Birds and all of that back 10, 15 years ago. And then in my last role, I was the CMO of a company called Sandbox. We were training about 70% of those joining the armed forces, helping them to be successful, stay connected with their family members, and just helping them go through their training and development as they were growing throughout their careers in the military.
That's incredible. And you joined solidcore in a period of a lot of growth, also a lot of events. Recently solidcore was acquired and sold from your existing partners like VMG, who I believe still has a stake within the business. L. Catterton acquired solidcore. How have you seen the business? You kind of joined a rocket ship. I still feel like you're still on the rocket ship, right?
Yes, and it's one of the most difficult parts where it's like every month it's getting bigger and better. We have 135 studios, we're adding another 25 this year. The brand awareness is growing. We've continued to level up across whether it's our analytics, from a digital standpoint when it comes to our paid media, the brand is coming together, our life cycle marketing is coming together, the in-studio experience is continuing to get better. And then something magical happens when you see all those integrated parts, when you're getting 1% better nearly every day with each element. So it's been pretty phenomenal. But then you're also having to look around corners where you're like, what is going to break 6 months from now when we are scaling at this level and getting this many consumers in, and new clients and new members, and how do we continue to help them be successful? So it's been a fantastic opportunity to level up areas while also try to look around corners as to what's coming next.
With marketing, it certainly goes through, it's been through a number of different changes, and what's happening from a technology perspective has certainly impacted that. Where you are in your business now, obviously there is some brand awareness, but where does your mind go in terms of the things that are important for you to spend your time on? Clearly there's a lot more competition in every area of fitness, whether that's digital, whether that's other businesses similar to yourselves, and the cost to engage with people and bring them in seems to be continuing to go up as well. So are you looking at are you sort of focused really on traditional areas, just doing a great job at executing, or are there any things that you're starting to see that you feel is going to be an evolution of where you as a brand need to go from a sort of marketing perspective?
I would say probably to start off, one of the things that I have been incredibly lucky to have coming into solidcore, and it's a marketer's dream, right? We have an incredible product. Our operations team, I would say, is best in the business, hands down. We look at consistency across studios, the amount of time we put into training team members and continuing to level them up. That as a starting point has given us a phenomenal foundation. And then from there, when I came on board, like Mo, in that first week, and we were talking through certain items, and what I needed to work on first was we need to look at where, who's our core client, who are we talking to, what are we talking to, setting our, making sure our mission and vision is defined, that brand positioning statement is defined. So there was a lot of that foundational work that, was there, but just wasn't documented very well as you continue to add. Like, we've 2,000 coaches now in the field, and making sure that they are telling that story every time someone walks into a studio, and that is matching what we're saying in our advertising and what we're doing with partnerships, and are our partnerships aligned, and this brand halo that we are continuing to build, making sure that all of that is reinforcing each other and continuing to be integrated, as I talked about earlier. And then, I think there's a couple of different pillars that I look at. Number one, it's what were the quick wins when I came on board, and any leader who's joining any business or anything that's going through rapid change, it's where are our analytics, where's our data, because that's going to inform all of the decisions that we're making. We can spend millions of dollars on brand campaigns and whatever else, but unless we're able to say, okay, this dollar is giving us Y dollars down the line, we're not going to get that continued investment in those areas and build trust and bring folks along that journey with us. So I would say we've started there. We've looked at some of our customer journeys, making sure that we're really tight on that. And then we're seeing where are the moments that we show up throughout people's lifestyle, even outside of the studio. So one of the things we talk about a lot internally is bringing the blue lights with you outside of the studio. Yes, you're there for 50 minutes, but how do you mentally bring that then when you're up on stage talking at a conference like this? So we brought Mo to class this morning, and then next thing you know, he's running in the rain for, on the way back to while I'm driving the Uber passing him. But
Did you see me run?
I saw you run.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So you were, it was pretty cool, just to see that. And so it's those elements that you sort of bring in around that journey. Plus there's certain things that are going to a great brand isn't built overnight. So we need to do that slowly. We need to bring the team along with us. We need to be incredibly intentional around what we're doing there, and incredibly intentional around the partners that we are working with as well for some of those campaigns, or influencers or creators, or whatever way you want to look at it.
Yeah, well, so one thing you talked about is you have 2,000 coaches today. That is wild. So I should stop texting Brian and take a class. I'm I took a class with this coach, because he probably doesn't know. I remember the days when he was a coach. I'm sure if he still is a coach or not.
He's a coach, yeah.
But I mean, when you were much smaller, he probably knew every single coach personally. Right now, at this scale, you kind of lose some of that personal connection. And I want to get into the point that you were speaking about this morning in your session, which is the gym becoming the third home. Some people call it the third space. And I think post-pandemic, and this transition was happening pre-pandemic as well, Starbucks used to be called, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, as being the third space. And in a lot of ways, it isn't, right? You kind of order your Starbucks now on the app. They've done everything to make Starbucks not the third space. You can order on the app, you can pick up, and you can leave. And they kind of don't want you to sit in. They have drive-thrus now at Starbucks, and that whole experience of what made Starbucks this cultural phenomenon is really not there anymore. And I think they want to win some of that back. But looking at solidcore, you're not like a traditional gym where you could have a co-working space, where you could have a smoothie bar and all the different amenities. How do you view solidcore being the third space? You kind of talked about expanding the blue lights outside of it. Is it more of a community and mindset thing? I mean, how do you plan on doing that?
Yeah, I think we think about it more because we looked at like the demographics and okay, yeah, we skew in some directions, but also have like, it's a pretty wide range of folks. So you can't just say 22-year-old females, that's our target market. So as we were doing like more research and talking to like folks out in the field, and be it in the suburbs or, you know, New York or LA, one of the things that was coming up was more of like a psychographic around, it was this growth-minded that was coming out, and that was the common theme across the board. So then when we started thinking about that, it was like, well, what does community look like? Because a lot of these folks, and younger folks nowadays as well, like they're less likely to be like, oh, well, we're going to go for like mimosas after class, and we're going to go for brunch, and it's going to be all around like, you know, the alcohol and stuff like this. Like they're drinking a lot, you know, they're drinking a lot less. And it became more, the community was more like, yes, that mentality piece. And then also bringing the local communities into which we are expanding into the studio as well. So, you know, we have always leaned heavily into cultural moments and supporting diversity and inclusion. And one of the elements, you know, we continue to run, lean in heavily on Black History Month, on Women's History Month, and on Pride. But then also as we expand to the West Coast, when we're talking to those communities, it was like, well, why aren't we doing anything around AAPI? Why aren't we doing anything around Hispanic Heritage Month? And we're saying, okay, we as a company are going to invest in this. We're going to lean in and we're going to meet our communities where they are. And what was awesome around that was then they were seeing, oh, these are people that look like me in the marketing. It's not traditional fitness marketing where it's all just like one specific body type or anything like that. And then our teams took the lead on it where they were like, hey, we're going to run Spanish language classes. Is that okay? And we're like, yeah, go for it. Or like Chinese New Year. And I think it really integrated. And like I'm sure you saw it this morning when we were in our West LA studio for Black History Month, they have a board up there where folks can write their favorite minority-owned businesses on the board in the local area. So then, you know, we're building community that way because it's like, hey, this coffee shop down the street, let's go there after class and let's go support them. And it's kind of getting to know that local area a little bit better. So I think those are some of the ways that we try and do community, less so than maybe, you know, yes, we want to go for drinks or we want to have a party after class type of atmosphere.
What do you need to be, or I guess sort of broaden it out from the industry, many people that are in this, you know, in the event over this week, you know, what are some of the things that we need to be concerned about, worried about, or potential threats within the space? Because there's a lot more competition. My guess is some of the people that maybe even go to solidcore could, you know, look at, you know, that spend could go in a number of different areas because although it's sort of health, wellness, it's also entertainment and it's a place to meet people. And so you know, the share of wallet is being very, you know, is distributed amongst a number of different areas. So are there any things that you think about in terms of threats or challenges or things that you have to be careful not to, get too complacent of in terms of the success that you're clearly having at the moment?
Yeah, and I think as we look at consumers and their health and fitness nowadays, there's a little bit more resiliency than maybe there was in the past in terms of like having some of that share of wallet going towards health and wellness, but it's definitely something like we have to continue to give value. We have to continue to make sure that we are leveling up and meeting the expectations of the client. And, you know, we're constantly updating our product and our workouts. We're adding new moves and getting feedback from that. If people are thinking like, hey, this movement is kind of stale. So like, how are we continuing to level up there? I think maybe the one flag I would have of someone who's come from like consumer and VC-backed tech into the fitness space, and I would say like kudos to Brian and the solidcore team. If you look at our leadership team, it is both very diverse in background from where we're coming from, but also diverse from a career perspective around, you know, we have like strategy consultants on board, folks coming from SaaS businesses, consumer tech, a wide range. One of the items that I would flag is probably just this idea around data and how we're using it, particularly as we're looking to AI in the future and stuff like that. Like when I talk to some of my peers, they don't have a very good understanding of, you know, a unified view of customer data, And okay, you might get away with that now, and you might get away with how you're tracking data, and it's fragmented across gyms. So like, you know, like Mo, when you go to our WeHo studio and you go again tomorrow in New York or wherever it ends up being, you know, we should know that. We should be able to have a conversation with you around that, and the messaging should be personalized, and you shouldn't be getting 10 different messages from 10 different studios. So I think there's some of that still has to happen, and folks have to level up in this industry of, whereas 10 years ago, like that has been table stakes when it comes to some consumer tech within the last 10 years. So I think those are the level of expectation that people have from some of this personalized messaging and things like that they've gotten from consumer tech and Facebook and Instagram and this user experience, that has to also be matched when it comes to, when it comes to health and wellness.
Well, I don't think your workouts are stale. I'm cringing to, I think I mentioned to you, but it was tough. Today was a tough workout. I love the movements. I think you are in a modality that is booming, being in Pilates, even though solidcore isn't, I guess, someone who's a truist in Pilates would not view solidcore as being true Pilates.
Yeah, and what we call it as well is sort of strength training on our custom-built reformer.
Yeah.
Because yes, to set that expectation of like, this isn't Pilates, this is strength training. You are going to sweat. It's going to be tough, and it's going to be an awesome workout.
And I was sweating, and it was tough. And then I'll also add that you are all corporate owned. So I think the complexity on franchising is something you don't have. You've got other constraints around capital and things like that as you're looking to raise. But from a digital perspective, I think those things probably make it a little bit less sophisticated than like another boutique company that might be franchised. So one thing that we've been wrapping up this series on at Connected Health and Fitness is asking you, and I know you are a marathon runner. I asked you to run with me today, but I know you had a session to prep for.
Thanks for calling me out for not running back. Okay.
Of course I'm going to do that. That's what I do. Do you have a personal hack that you've learned? Is there a personal wellness tool that you've learned recently that has really worked for you?
I get in trouble at solidcore for talking about Whoop too much.
And I see you have a Whoop.
Too often,
yes.
And I have a Whoop. And this is going to be, and obviously do a good bit of travel with this. So I've been
And we had a Whoop rep.
Yes, so Tatiana from Whoop was at class this morning too, and she's a massive solidcore user or client as well. I think sleep is honestly the hack that I've been trying to prioritize this year. So I was in New York last week. Here this week, I am on a 7-day, 100% sleep streak right now and feel like pretty incredible.
Seriously?
Yeah.
With the travel?
With the travel.
We need to take some notes because we compare our sleep notes. We both have Oura rings on, and
so but it takes time. So like, I mean, it's like we were out late last night with, we did a team dinner here for all of our team that did an incredible job, dealing with the recent like fires and everything in LA. So we were going out, spending some time with them, and it was, late. And then we had the class at 6 a.m. this morning. So it did take a decent amount of planning. But then it's like today you feel energized because you planned it, but it did mean like not having dinner last night because I was like, okay, between that, the jet lag, everything else, that it wasn't going to work out. But that I think is like, that's one of the things that I've been focusing on this year that I think just helps level everything up. It's so boring and it's so like,
no, but it's so impactful. Matthew, I know you've had periods of time where you've stopped drinking. And that's improved your sleep recovery score too.
As well, that does make a big difference. Although I had a terrible night's sleep last night for whatever reason. I was like about 73, so we need to have a chat afterwards. Tell me what you're doing.
Yeah, happy to go through it because no one else will talk to me about it
That's
anymore.
like Brian Johnson level because he's all about the 100% of sleep scores. Well, Shane, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks, gents.